The oxygen you breathe technically is what is killing you. But I, through many means, ensured your survival. I am not like death. I keep the great plagues alive. Over the eons, it has changed form, yes. First, it was physical, mental, emotional, now even spiritual. I am not your enemy. I am simply a matter of fact. One
Yeah.
not of bias or favoritism or otherwise, simply to do what
Hmm.
must be done.
Under the other's orders, huh? You know, you say for humanity and for the purpose of infancy of humanity as to where it is. The same could be said for your side and your kind as well, could it not? There's always a start and a stop. It always goes up that ladder that you claim, doesn't it? At what point
Are
are
you
you just an
trying to
experiment?
imply that me and my equals are in a disproportional ladder? Hmm?
Trying to imply, have you ever thought of yourselves as something just exactly as us at this point, on a different level?
To put it in simple terms, you would claim us as gods playing in the sandbox with toys.
Mm-hmm. But reality is there's a bigger sandbox, and you are the toy, and someone else is playing with you, and so forth, and that continually goes. You
All
ever
to
considered
the
that?
design of
Of course.
everything.
Of course. You know, you talked about hope dying and free will. Do you not have free will? You choose yes or no, good or bad, per se, sway that balance, which we've talked about,
Your
one way or the
perception
other.
of free will is, again, that of the mortal kind, third dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
If given the opportunity to expand your horizon, I would love to see what happens if you were to have such knowledge. But it can't be I that provides that. Not easily.
Are you offering me that?
If I were to offer you that, you wouldn't be who you are now.
That's the ironic
And a
part. I'm not
lot
supposed to even
more.
be here. You know that.
mm, The barrier between life and death is weakening, as I have told you.
Mm-hmm. What you're saying is I would be you, in a way. That way you're going up?
Not me in particular. You would cease to exist as who you are now. you would shed your mortal connection, attachments. Your spiritual energy, so to speak, would blurry into the aether, where you would comprehend a percentage. Believe it or not, my responsibilities have taken me from this island across the world these last cycles. It seems humanity is on a very interesting trajectory.
And what's that trajectory? Where do you see it?
You already know what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Something about not being able to comprehend it, right? Hmm. You know, it's the ironic part about most of this. When you said you were here to remove the two of them, your equal and him, what you describe as to that offer, I thought it was one and the same at that point. In
You
order to
thought I'd
remove
be
that.
removing death as well.
No, Norman from death.
That is still the plan.
Oh, I know. I know. That was always mine as well. And I think it was two separate ways of getting there. Hmm. I'm not sure how to even contextualize this because it just doesn't feel real. And feeling is very much something I can't do right now. But it doesn't. Because reality, I was prepared to lose everything. Set everything aside, who I was, my personality, everything, if it meant, ideally, that no one else here would have to suffer from his games. And let death be truly what it was. It meant taking him out. Not me, not anybody else, just it. You sound like there's something else with that. Not that thing. So expand. Okay. Hmm.
Whatever grand plan you may come up with, I am curious how your kind would deal with such like us.
You elaborate on that? Us?
How would you handle dealing with death or famine? We are pillars of this existence. To remove one would cause unspeakable disasters.
Have you read that? I want to take a look at that. Specifically the part of getting rid of him.
I do find it funny. So close yet so far.
Reality is, I would never be closer to it than that. I didn't write it. Not any of us wrote that.
It was the spirit of a man who had seen a phrase you may be familiar with, flying too close to the sun.
I think he touched the sun.
And yet he persists.
Seems like he's endured it. I don't have more accurate information. I don't have a theory. I don't have a philosophy beyond that. That's all I've got. And if it was a shot, it was a shot. Shot that I've been willing to take for a while now. Remove everything and any thought of who I was. Yeah. I think I understand what you're saying, but reality is, you still say the us part. I'm not sure what you quite mean by that.
If you were to equate what is written in that book to myself, I can assure you it would not pan out as you may think. I shedded the spirit of Isaac. I may inhabit the mortal coil, but if I so deemed it, at the click of fingers, I could change that.
In what sense?
I could look like you. I could embody that of another. Or I could return to a more primal state, as some may say. The reason for this mortal coil is more the pleasantries for your kind. Everybody needs a face to a name, someone they can look toward, unlike many of the Almighty who prefer to remain faceless, mysterious in the fact that they inscribed in their loyal subjects the notion that they were crafted in one's image. Unfortunately, there are fanatics who take that notion as other.
Let's not get this wrong. I'm no fanatic.
Not claiming you are.
I see enough of them.
And I'm sure you've seen plenty willing to throw themselves into the fire. Hmm?
Oh, I see your... Guess I shouldn't call him pet. That's inconsiderate. What do you call him? Wayne?
Mr. Freeman.
If that's what you want to call him, sure. Seen him more than I've ever seen him in my life or care to. To the point he is crawling and hiding in bushes around here. You consider fanatic? I see it every time he's here.
The curiosity of mankind. Hmm? They see something unexplainable. They begin stirring questions they want answers to.
Or the cowardice of not being able to confront it. The hope to learn from observation.
True. I'm sure that may play a part. But let me ask you this. Have you ever been to a particularly tall monument? Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building, Eiffel Tower, Pyramids of Giza? Or even a lighthouse?
I think you know
Stood
the answer to that. Sure, go ahead.
at the very top of such, looked over the edge, and felt a feeling of unquenchable curiosity, a draw to the void. Almost as if your body wills it to lean further and further forward.
Naturally, someone would say no, but I'd be lying if I said that.
Consciously, everyone would deny such. Makes you sound a point of concern for most, but
Mm-hmm.
natural instincts, that little engine in your skull, is such a wonder of curiosity. It seeks answers even though it knows deep down that it would be the point of no return. Why do you think so many that speak about their near-death experiences have so many similarities?
Because they're all willing to speak about it and they've all experienced it. At least they say they have. But it's the ability to actually say it and try to confront it.
There are measures in place that would deny such. But either by fate or by design, there are opportunities.
And once again, what is that opportunity? Because you haven't said it yet.
A matter of perspective. For some, the opportunity to speak of what is beyond is a chance to instill faith. You've said it yourself. Even instill hope.
It comes from within in someone.
Or
Or
it can be
something.
influence.
They can, yes. But it's a feeling, as anything else is, that a predictable or projected outcome could happen. You know that? That's what the hope is. It's not anything else but a thought, an ideal, or ideation of something that is created and owned by oneself, influenced by others, sure.
It is very much a feeling, too.
Oh, it is. It's many things, not just one. Your hand looks different. Why? What's changing with that? It doesn't look anything like it did the other day.
The wheels of time are turning. The threads of fate are spinning.
Are you becoming more human?
Quite the opposite.
You're dying.
You're very driven by the finality of things, aren't you?
Well, you said the opposite. Usually equate living with
Becoming
dying.
more human,
Well, that usually has an end to it. That
and I'm
infers
not
living.
becoming human.
No,
Not
I know.
living, not dying,
I get it.
not alive or dead.
Yeah, you used that one on me before. I'm. I guess the opposite of me becoming more human is becoming more, as you said, primal. Is that better?
A long road to take for that. Not out of the realm of possibility.
Huh. But why? Truly. Is it your choice? Or is it the design? Is you being here in a physical form causing that?
Here and now, I would not say it is causing that, but I believe I inferred the other day. I am here. I am in the jungles, the deserts, even some of the snowy ice caps, seeing and nurturing all that is alive. I'm sure you or others think of me as a evil entity, the big bad man.
Reality is, it's a label that we artificially create because something happens that we don't understand. We want to bucket it into a certain thing, and I'm very guilty of having and doing that continually. You see, immediately, there was a preconceived notion of what and who and how you are, operate, live. If, well, not live, because that's silly to assume. But all those things were grouped together and presented in multiple different ways to form, basically, give a label to who you were. Evil, sure. Reality of it, I'm trying to understand something because I'm trying to also remove someone else's bias from what it truly is. Because anyone can put a spin on information, wording, and get to the result that is desired. And if that desired result is to label you as someone being evil, then yes, it has been done many times before. At this point, I just want to understand. It's frustrating.
A game of telephone. Mm.
All too well. I've played that game more than you can imagine. I've influenced that game more than you can imagine as well. Usually, if you have the first conversation with someone, you get to control the narrative. I used that many times to keep myself alive. But yeah, telephone or influence. Biases add on biases and storytelling grows. Until the truth no longer exists. So here I am trying to talk to the person that can give me the truth. I'm left with more questions than I have answers and less direction than I originally had. An offer but not an offer, a speak but not speak, a alive but not alive, and to remove or heal but hasn't done.
And
That
that
summarize it?
frustrates you. Mm.
Because people come and ask me what's happening and I don't have the answer to tell them. Because I don't. And usually, most times I did. That's what I was known for. Having some sort of answer for someone, but reality is I don't. This is something I just don't understand. I'm not going to pretend that I do. I thought I did, but I don't.
To be a fly on the wall when you meet the Almighty.
Oh, I'm sure he'd love meeting me.
That is the thing. Those who have passed and had that opportunity, they get to ask everything. And unlike our conversations, unlike the conversations you have with Death or Norman, the Almighty can answer anything. All comes down to design.
The answer to everything, isn't it? But it's understanding what that design is, and the design has a vision when it first starts. The vision influences the design as design is then part of a project. That project is then completed. At least that's normally how those things work. So yeah, it's still in the designing phase. I want to know what the product is.
I told you this galaxy is barely out of its diapers.
Uh-huh.
There is an unfathomable number of them out there. Each unique. Different ideas, different, as you say, visions and direction.
The petri dish of galaxies, huh? See which one survives, right?
It's funny you mentioned Petri dish.
I knew that would get your attention.
Do you remember the events of Alexander Fleming?
Remind me.
The medical practitioner who discovered penicillin.
High alcohol.
He went on a 2-week vacation. He was known for being very messy,
Mm-hmm.
unobservant. He returns to his studies and discovers a petri dish where mold had begun to grow. I told you sometimes I have to nudge things.
Mm-hmm.
The accidental discovery that would go on to save millions.
The
In
world's
some
first
cases,
antibiotic.
still used to this day.
And what'd you
It's
say it
always
was
interesting
earlier?
what happens when
A
a
bacteria?
window is open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Disease gets such a bad rap for being filthy, chaotic. But really, more describes the people that get sick. Diseases themselves are rather pure, single-minded, and bacteria have only one purpose: divide and conquer. The harsh reality is, in the end, they always win. But you have those moments of opportunity. A window being open, a small nudge in the cosmic design.
Hmm.
I have
Humanity.
taken lives, yes. Trimmed the branches that need trimming. But as I said, humanity is the greatest plague, and I will ensure it persists.
In what form? Because if you want to take humanity, compare it to penicillin and mold at this point, you would know that there's also resistance that gets developed over time. Are you saying that you're trying to strengthen it, or you're trying to make it more vulnerable so that more comes out of it? Because reality, modern medicine, the more times that you apply stuff like penicillin to a bacteria, the more resistant it gets. Are you saying you're changing humanity to fight a different side to that, or for its own purpose?
I told you before in a previous conversation, everything to heal the human body is found within the human body. Unfortunately, your modern sciences are not caught up. Why do you think I inhabited Isaac?
I'm guessing it wasn't willingly. But go ahead, Doctor. Makes sense. Most logical connection, but I'm sure there's another reason you're going to give me which I don't understand.
Isaac wasn't adopted when I found him.
What was his
I was.
last name when you found him?
You already know that.
It wasn't Smith.
And by deduction,
You say it was actually Bones.
the two brothers,
They actually were brothers, huh?
raised in a very dark environment. Victims, some would say.
Of what?
Monstrosities against a child by that of supposedly the carer, the parent.
Yeah.
Keep an animal caged and poke at it, beat it. Eventually, it'll be backed into the corner to the point it will lash out. Hmm?
You're not wrong. So then that makes me think that you had a earlier interaction with Isaac.
Did
If you
Olivia ever tell you about Isaac's injuries he sustained?
It's been so long I don't recall. Probably, but I would not be able to say it accurately.
Whilst he sustained a fatal stabbing injury, rendered his left arm numb. The nervous system was shutting down. It was like almost a cancer spreading through his body. It threatened his work, his life, his ability to function. One aspect that would further be agitated was his memory. I kept him together.
Was that supposed to be?
At a very young age, I influenced his course of life in removing a lot of the memories of the torture and torment he suffered. I granted him knowledge, that of medical nature, enhanced to a degree that is unlike any other in the field. He was a hematologist. He worked with blood. There's a particular disease they would classify it as, the sickle cell anemia. You're familiar?
Tearing of red blood cells so they're partial. Very painful illness. Typically affects more females than males. In general, usually treated by, I believe, some sort of transfusion or iron chelation, I believe.
There are
I could be
drastic
wrong.
measures, barbaric in some forms. Draining a person of their entire blood pool just to replace it with something else can be rather devastating. More damage done than good. For Isaac, I provided knowledge to encourage another line of research, close to a cure as you can get. Isaac Smith won all forms of awards, recognition, commendation. But just like Alexander Fleming, a nudge had to be taken.
So you're nudging humanity.
Keeping you alive.
Once again, at what cost, it feels like.
I told you just.
Oh, I know. I know.
The galaxy is barely out of its diapers. You've barely left one planet. Picture this. Within the next century, humanity will reach Mars. Potentially towards the end of the millennium, have reached other planets in this solar system. 5, 10, 15, 20,000 years from now, where do you see humanity? If not wiped out by its own drive of war and conflict.
I think seeing humanity is two separate things with that because, truthfully, humanity is what I define us around that now. In some other place, some other galaxy, if you consider it that, might not be considered humanity. It might not even be considered the same thing whatsoever. Is there a dominant or less dominant? Is it just us that is currently here? Is it the traveling, or is it the actual merging between existing? The possibility that I don't know.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, your kind were merely clambering in caves around a fire, painting along the walls with their fingers. 500 years ago, there were women burned at stakes for being, quote unquote, witches. "50 to 60 years ago, humanity began development of technology. Capable of being smaller than even an atom. 80 years ago, humanity harnessed the power of the atom. That changed the course of everything. I understand it may be hard to fathom or imagine the possibilities.
Well, you say the development of technology or things around it, and you also have to consider is it a different age of technology and where we were before. Once it comes to think of who built the pyramids and that philosophy behind that as well. Was it different technologies? Are we
And
more
if
in
I were to
machine?
state the quote of
Mm-hmm.
history tends to repeat itself, the lessons of the past sometimes go amiss, and humanity is then doomed to repeat. Hmm.
It is. Doesn't even have to go back that long. Or that far.
Not even a century.
Oh no. Huh. Try 6 years when I've seen the same things tried here that are happening again. Happens every day. For some, every few minutes.
I can only hope this line of conversation is opening your eyes on previous.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the first opportunity that you even presented and where you're going and how that is connected. I told you the reason I'm here, and if it aligns, well, then maybe.
You've asked a few times why I have not already dealt with Norman.
I have yet to get an answer. No matter how many times I've tried to ask the question or how many different ways I've tried to ask it, it has still remained unanswered.
If I were to give you the answer and you were to convey that to your friends, you've already seen how information is misconstrued,
Oh, I have.
taken completely in the opposite direction of intent. I can lay it out for you, clear as day. But I imagine at some point it would be distorted.
So you're not going to tell me, are you?
I haven't decided. Part of me says if I tell you, and we work together, the outcome would be rather sooner than you may think. But that depends on how your associates, your friends, those involved with them, and the wide web of connections that plays into it. Because I will say this, the direction needed to be taken is not one that is easy to tread. Even edging toward impossible for humanity.
Hmm. You know, the thought was that it had to have been done as someone died. Am I closer?
The parasite that infects death is not one that latches from other to other, spirit to spirit.
No, that was intent and purposeful. He had the belief that that's what he was, incarnate. He had the control of it and the intention of it. Am I far off on that or not?
I won't deny there was a point of embracing one another. A point that seemed plausible for unity, but in recent cycles it has proven it is not the way for our kind to
The what?
proceed.
coexist.
I told you it took a great amount of energy to remove Isaac.
What if that was intended? The unison between the two of you. And what if you broke that
Wasn't
unintentionally?
intended,
Is that
and it was
something you can
intended
answer?
for the departure.
With all certainty.
Olivia had a purpose. There was a reason for that. Now, that very reason is the reason I have not yet spoken with death. The reason I stand here and not over there. The barrier is weakening, but there are remnants of it. And until those remnants are dealt with, Norman will persist.
Huh. And what remnant is that? Or multiple?
I'll leave that for you to consider.
I think I've already considered that, and I just want to hear it from you.
I've nudged too far.
No, I think you've nudged far enough to know that I just want the confirmation at this point. I need to hear it from your mouth because I've already considered it. Go ahead. Just say it. For once, just say it.
It's not time for that yet. I do formally apologize if it frustrates you, but there are limitations, responsibilities, and duties that must be upheld.
And when is it time? The longer I sit on this porch, the more people ask me questions, the more I can't answer them. Not that every question needs an answer either, as you've demonstrated that quite well. I get that. Maybe this is one of your forms of torture, as it feels pretty mental at this point to go through it.
Even as a spirit, I'm still human.
To an extent, yeah, it is. You see, I think it's been 3 months, 4 months at this point. The longer I stay here, the more I think like it. The more I assume it. I'm not. When I originally first came, I felt nothing with it. The more and more I see everything and what's happening, it comes back. I start to feel things more than I used to. Or at least develop a care or a sense around it. I'm guessing is not an intended purpose at all. It makes it that much harder to do what I need to do then. That give you perspective?
It's still seeking for that purpose.
No, not seeking for the purpose. I think the purpose is already understood. Just any of those thoughts, connections, the people around you, it becomes that much harder the longer I'm here. Doesn't it?
I've told you, life is cruel. It's not meant to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
Even my acts of nudging can be seen as cruel.
Unorthodox would also be there, right next to that.
Just be glad you weren't there when they.
You used to cure mental sickness by spinning someone around in a room on a table? That one seemed pretty
I
bad
wasn't
too.
even thinking of that. I was thinking of how they were led to curing smallpox. Those poor cows. That alone could have been seen as cruel, but in the eyes of humanity, a necessity.
So you're comparing this to a necessity that has to happen? Something that makes it that much harder?
To an extent.
Still haven't answered the question about removing him. I don't know how many more times I can ask it. I'm not saying as to how. At this point, I'm more asking as to when from your side. Energy, yes, sure, absolutely. You're saying that you have to, at this point, nudge more people to generate that, or what? Because I'm. How would that even come to be?
I have nudged in more ways than you may think. Just because you can't see it now doesn't mean in time it won't come to fruition. That is the one constraint that is cruel to you. Time.
Oh, if you only knew.
You realize who you're saying that to.
Oh, I do. I do. Believe me. I do. Just another form of a mental torture, if you mention time. I've always worn a watch. Time has always been something that I've been distinctly and acutely aware of.
A watch that doesn't tick can
Mm-hmm.
drive you insane, just like one that does.
Then you know the reasonings for some of my actions in my past. Because there was a point where it didn't tick. And I'm not talking about now. I'm talking 6, 7 years ago. Maybe even 8 at this point. Time meant more to me than probably anyone else in humanity. Well, it probably doesn't mean anything to you. You're talking to a person that time has defined everything. Until it doesn't. And it ceases to exist. And that watch stops ticking. Like it has now.
A common line of thought for humans are death is the end. The full stop.
Never believed that. That's not my point to actually influence or say what that is.
The final end is that of time. Give it enough time and everything will cease. Life, death, hope. All it
You,
takes is time.
Norman.
And I.
Then that means there was a beginning of time to begin with as well. And something before you.
Unfathomable, isn't it?
No. Not by any means for what you have said. I think that's very logical at this point. I think it would be
Logical,
illogical
sure.
if you try to deny that fact because reality is, once again, who creates the creator and keeps going all the way up. And you say design, and that's not meant to be comprehended. I get that. Nor to be
And one day
influenced.
even God will be reaped.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree. It's a logical train of thought. But unfathomable to even imagine or picture what came before.
It's anything like you described. Sounds to me like another petri dish experiment. Who knows? So what is it you're asking?
I'm not asking anything now.
What are you suggesting? Because all these conversations have been very philosophical in nature. I'm sure you wouldn't particularly care to go in one direction with it if you didn't have something in your mind that you were already considering. You wouldn't have sat here for hours having this conversation if there wasn't something in the back of your mind that you were not considering already. Because you have already done it.
I told you the answer to that.
Energy,
The barrier
time.
of purgatory is weakening. Yet there are remnants that persist, that ensure I cannot do what is needed. You want Norman gone? I need him gone. The world needs him gone. Existence demands he is gone.
He's not the only one, is he? You need me gone as well, don't you? Because I threatened that barrier. Couldn't go back and forth, should it? Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong, please.
I mean this with no disrespect to you. In my nudging, I can't give direct answers for everything, but
Well, that was a
harsh as this
very...
may sound, you are a byproduct of this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I already knew the answer to that, and I tried to get you to tell me it before, and you wouldn't do it. In reality, yeah, I understand that. What's on with your hand?
This is what happens when I have to peel back the curtain too much. It takes a toll. Just like it does on any of us. Peel it too back, too far back, and it becomes worse.
That's why you asked me to go speak to him about moving on, didn't you?
Maybe you'd find answers by having another conversation. With Norman.
I mean, hard to do these days. Seems to me that your presence here has put him... What'd you call it? Not hiding, but the space, your domain. Seems like he's there.
Recoiled into sanctuary.
Mm-hmm. And what if I don't?
You delay the inevitable.
You saying I can continue to screw over humanity? That you need it gone? Here's what I'm going to say, Pestilence, is that if that's truly what needs to happen, then you better start answering the questions at this point, because reality, I'm not going to sit here any longer. I get the question that answers it. For your own sake and everybody else's.
Whilst I may sustain humanity, I cannot give you everything on a silver platter.
No, I understand that. What you're saying is that you just gave me the blackmail card of humanity if I really wanted to screw something up.
And they call me evil.
You think inherently I am?
No. Inherently, humanity has all the makings of. Hmm. I told you that diseases get a bad rap. But in reality, it just describes the people that get sick.
Are you not accelerating that process? Doing exactly what he's doing? Or are you saying yours is natural? That was meant to happen. That same mindset could be applied to anything else at that point, and any four of you.
You're starting to see. Emphasis on starting. Everything is interlocked, intertwined. A cosmic dance of fire and water. Life and death. Whilst you do have the quote unquote blackmail card of humanity, have you stopped to think how long you have left? Hmm? You're forgetting your memories more and more as each day passes. With time, even this conversation, you'll forget. What happens to a spirit that loses all sense of self?
I can tell you.
Now that is something I know humanity does not have the answer for.
No. Couldn't even pretend to know. There's no showcase as to what happens. There's no lesson. There's no history. There's no textbook or ignoring what has happened before with that I'm aware of.
Because nobody is meant to come back from purgatory.
But multiple have. Tell me,
Chaos in their way.
is Edgar meant to be down there?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but he made a deal and tried to circumvent the deal. Hmm?
But who did he make a deal with?
Death.
Oh, it wasn't Norman.
Norman.
Not the same. So did he make a deal with Norman or with Death?
Makes you wonder. I've only heard of this through my methods. as I said, sickness has infected death.
That once again starts the conversation because if your answer at some point would be Norman, or if the two of them are one and the same and the influence at any point is biased towards the one that is the
They
keeper.
are not one and the same.
Oh, I understand that. But if that perspective ever merges and there is a percentage, should you ever assign a percentage of who makes those decisions there? Because reality, any influence that he has is unnatural. So even potentially that deal is unnatural. And I think you'd agree with me on that. In reality, is he even supposed to be there? Because death has been influenced and you know it.
Was Isaac supposed to be there?
No. You said you cured him. He wasn't supposed to be alive. But you intervened.
If it wasn't for me, he would have been dead a long, long time ago.
Then isn't that how he's supposed to be? If that was intended and that was supposed to be natural, you influenced it. Just like...
My binding to Isaac was that of fate.
Then what if Norman and death are of fate as well?
We've already had a conversation of balancing, checking one another.
Oh, I have. What happens if you remove him and take over the responsibility of two?
I don't intend or desire the responsibilities of two. I intend and will pursue the returning of the one. Because until Norman is gone, you already know. Individuals of this island are curious creatures, driven by a sense of importance, that they can outdo death. They only see what is in front of them. They don't look past the horizon, the damages that are done, the consequences. Even now, you're surrounded by individuals who are rather reckless. Chaos for the sake of chaos. Living life 100 miles per hour. Not a care in the world.
You say that. I think it's been more chaotic since you got back here than anything else. In a form that people see you in.
Has it been more chaotic, or
Oh,
is it
has
just
it
you're
ever?
focusing in on a particular aspect?
An aspect that wasn't there normally, or as prominent as it was.
That is a bias.
I don't have any reference to compare it to because it didn't particularly exist in the past 5 years. Or in the past year to begin with. You never heard of people going to the hospital with rats in them. And once
But you
again...
have people always going to the lighthouse, always scared of death. You focus on that, and it will be in a large number. You focus on me, and I am everywhere. A matter of fact. People tunnel vision. Hone in on a particular problem or situation. Extrapolate it into mountains out of molehills, when it's just a daily occurrence. God forbid you apply the same line of thought to war and conflict. shootouts did you find yourself in?
Reality is I tried to avoid them, but enough.
Quote unquote wars
Hmm.
over the smallest and minute of things.
You're preaching to the choir on that one. I don't dispute that. It actually sickens me.
If war was here, I'm sure they would say they merely opened one's mind, removed any self awareness of the inner feelings of humanity.
Hmm.
There's a bloodlust that deeply is rooted in all of you. Just takes a little bit of encouragement.
Nudging, as you'd say. That's all you all do
I
is nudge.
nudge. War is more
Hands on, physical.
abrasive.
Oh,
Then you meet famine.
can't say I've met either of those two.
That you have.
I know. The saying as to they were here before I existed and they will be here after I've gone. I get it.
You
Believe
don't
me.
have to meet someone to know of their effect. Great leaders of the past, good and bad, have had their effects, and we see that. How history is taught to the young.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with us, look around this island. How many times has it been a war zone? Sanguine, the illegal occupation of sandy shores.
I would never compare Sanguine to any of these wars that you speak of on this island. That was much more than any of these squabbles that you'd speak about. And you know that. That one
I
is
would
personal.
argue a comparison.
But you know. It's no different than the conquering of nations at that point. No different than World War One, Two, and any other ones.
I had a rather interesting view of when the lost MC tried to secede from Los Santos. That turned into a war. Same tactics, barbaric in nature, that were applied on Sanguine. Sanguine just had the luxury of being its own little speck of land.
Not all wars are created equal. You and I know that. I'll never compare disrespect that goes to war with bloodshed in the streets to anything that happened in Sanguine, and you can understand I take that one personally.
At the root of it all, it is boiled down to a form of right versus wrong, power seeking, one demanding the other to bend their knee.
That's quite the binary view from you. Usually, if I come at that perspective, I'm not meant to understand it. I'm surprised to hear you say it that way. 'Cause that's how I would have interpreted it to begin with.
I'm glad I'm able to now word things for you to understand.
Oh, let's start back at square one then. Let's start understanding.
As much as you try to dig, I have responsibilities, rules, or guidelines, depending.
I want you to expand on that a little offer about getting those questions answered. Not from you. As you said, you can't.
You talk with Norman, that'll be straightforward. Well,
I'm not
and
talking
again,
Norman either.
Norman is a individual with selfish desires.
I'm talking about the conversation of the greater understanding. The one that I'm guessing once that barrier is back together, right?
When the barrier is repaired, you won't be here, but you will be there. Waiting for your judgment. But a way that humanity looks at that is binary. Heaven or hell. Hmm? Good or bad. But there is another. And the longer you linger, the higher chance you will go to that other. It's where Isaac was destined to go.
And Norman.
And potentially Edgar.
The no longer existing one, huh?
There you've heard of it.
No, I have. The book I gave you referenced it. The one that you returned to me. You could have just answered that one to begin with.
Remember, bacterium sitting at the table should not get snarky.
Not the snarky nature, my apologies, but more of a satisfaction of an answer that could have saved 45 minutes of a conversation. You know that.
45 minutes for you is long.
No. It's actually quite short in most terms. Matter of perspective, you'd say that, right? What the fuck? Oh man, TJ's an asshole. Oh Jesus. Alright.
I believe it is time for me to take a leave of this place. Maybe you'll have a conversation with Norma.
Here's hoping on that.
Well, you take care. I'll be watching.